Well, hello everybody. This is Timothy Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live streaming poetry podcast on the planet. In your ears, not on your laptops. Our guest for episode number 356 is our very own Mary Keating, a familiar face. She'll be here in a few minutes, but before we get in, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this. We love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. We're going to start out like we always do with our Poets Respond poet. And our poet this week is a poet who's been on before on episode number 79 way back in the day, farther long ago back than I thought. But here she is, Alison Townsend. Hey, Alison, how you doing?
Hi, Tim. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. And I knew, when Dolly Parton passed away, I knew, and Katie said too, like, we have to have a Dolly Parton poem. And I was really hoping for a good one because she's such, so many of the news stories are really, tragic, terrible things going on in the world. And so when there's a story as sad as Dolly dying, she was such a positive light. And so it's nice to have a poem celebrating someone like that. Do you want to start out, because everybody knows sort of what it's about, just by reading the poem, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you put it together?
Sure. Happy to read it. I'm reading from paper, so I haven't yet gotten the reading from screen down. Letter to Dolly from Rutland Township, Wisconsin, the day after her death. A hippie girl raised on rock and roll, I came to you late, imagining myself better than anything country. I thought you a hillbilly, like my Kentucky grandmother in her flour sack apron, raised in a log cabin like you and dreaming of beauty as she listened to gospel on her wind-up Victrola, fired the wood stove, wrung a chicken's neck in one quick twist, and made biscuits so light and flaky it felt like eating clouds. But when I fell for you, Dolly, I fell hard, smitten by how everything about you was over the top. Your fake platinum hair piled 3 beehives high, your plush lips, your 20-inch waist, and obviously augmented boobs, and always an abundance of rhinestones, as if you were a galaxy in female form. Didn't I love sparkle too? Wasn't I sass and determination sweetened with honey? Didn't I want to crack the rock and release the river inside as I drove back and forth across the West one summer, running away from my first husband, then running home again until I finally got the courage to leave? Your voice on the radio kept me from crossing the double yellow line at 2 a.m. as I blasted through Idaho and into Montana. The quality of mercy you extended rare in this dog-eat-dog world. Mile after mile I listened, sitting up straighter when I heard you sing Jolene or I Will Always Love You or 9 to 5 or Light of a Clear Blue Morning in your signature silver twang, wondering if my grandmother ever heard you on her windowsill radio. Did your words reach her heart the way they seeped into mine? Alone in the car with your voice, not a house in sight. Your music, my only friend. You made me believe I could be bigger than I knew. The ache in your voice was strong enough to pull an entire country together, falling on our knees. Your spirit so big and true, even Donald Trump ordered flags flown at half-mast for a week. I sobbed when I heard you died, as if you were someone I knew, though I never even saw you in concert. The loss felt personal, your words naming things I couldn't express. I just lost my place. Your words naming things I couldn't express, like sugar dissolving in tears, or the faint memory of my grandmother twirling once in her immaculate kitchen, saying, "Oh, honey, music is the language of the soul," her words falling over me like rain. No one could sing it the way you did, Dolly, making yourself into a show that was never just about you, in a voice that stole all our hearts, rocks cracking open to reveal everyone's sparkle and shine.
Yeah, beautiful poem and great tribute to Dolly Parton. That was A Letter to Dolly from Rutland Township, Wisconsin, the day after her death by Alison Townsend. And Alison, so how did that poem, like, when did you know you were going to write a poem about Dolly Parton? Was it something that as soon as she died, you knew that was something you had to do?
I found out about Dolly's death oddly first in The Guardian. I didn't read it in the American papers first. I think I looked at The Guardian that night that she died, and I saw it, and I thought, oh wow, file that away. But I was actually trying to write a sestina for something else that I was doing, and so the next morning I began to write it after abandoning my sestina, and I didn't write it as a poem first. I wrote it as a sort of stream of consciousness riff in my journal, but then I began to see that it was lyrical and there were images and it was a poem, not a piece of prose. So then I began to make it into stanzas and make it into a poem. That's sort of how it evolved for
Mm-hmm.
me. So
Yeah, yeah. And I know it's kind of a tough question, or maybe it's an easy question. I don't know. But what would you say that makes Dolly Parton such an important and singular person? Like what is the one thing that made her special and that you remember her by?
You know, her tremendous heart, I think, just her, such a big heart in such a tiny package,
Yeah.
because I think she was like 5 feet tall. And I mean, that summer that I mentioned in the poem, when I was driving back and forth all over the West, running away and running home again, I mean, that was really the first time I think I listened very seriously to country music because that was all there was on the radio. It was years ago. And I just was so struck by how often her songs came up, on oldie stations or just, and here's another one by Dolly. And it was kind of a lifeline for me, I think. And then I began to really pay attention to her, instead of being a snarky Woodstock girl saying, "Oh, I'm above country." I mean, what the hell was I thinking? So that's sort
Yeah.
of how that evolved. And I just sort of paid attention to her closely after that,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
incredible model she is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, really, really well said. So much to learn from Dolly, but we could all be a little bit more like her, and the world would definitely be a better place.
Yeah.
Well, Alison, thanks so much for being here and for doing all you do. Always love your poetry. Glad to have you on and get to see you back in the
Oh,
pages of
such a
Rattle again.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Such a pleasure, Tim. Thanks so much for bearing with me as I kept sending you different versions.
no
This is the
problem at
Dolly
all.
Parton. This cat is a sort of Dolly Parton cat. So best of luck to Mary too. I can't stay, but I really look forward to reading her work. I'm happy to discover it. Thank
All
you,
right.
Tim.
Well, thanks so much, Alison. Yeah, so it was
Okay.
Alison Townsend with her poem "A Letter to Dolly" from Rutland Township, Wisconsin, the day after her death. That was a Poet Respond poem on Rattle.com. If you have any poems about current events, anything going on in the last week, submit them by Friday night at midnight. You go to Rattle.com, under content, you'll see Poet Respond. Find the link to submit there, and we publish poems, keeping poetry part of the dialogue every Sunday. So make sure you get your poems in. Also, if you don't already, sign up for the daily poem by email. Go to the bottom of Rattle.com, any page in the footer there, you'll find the sign up link. Add your email address, and you'll get these poems in your inbox every day. All right, now let's take a quick break and go to our main guest, Mary Keating. So sit tight. We'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Mary Keating. Mary's a poet, lawyer, editor, and disability rights advocate whose first book, Recalibrating Gravity, which I've read here, tells more than 50 years of her life through poetry. After a car accident left her paraplegic at 15, she went on to graduate from Yale Law School, practice law, advocate for accessibility, travel, and become an advanced scuba diver as well. Her poem Full of It appeared in our ghazals issue at Rattle. And y'all know her well, I think, around here. Most of us do. Mary Keating. Hey, Mary, how you doing?
Hey, Tim. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure
can you hear
to have
that
you.
train going by?
No, actually, Zoom cuts out so much from the background, so I don't.
Okay.
But I would like the atmosphere of it.
I live right near a railroad track. So.
Oh, yeah. So why don't we start out? The first poem you have for us is Poetry Sunday, which sort of is a bit of an Ars Poetica. And, we like talking about, the why we do poetry in the first place. So do you want to start out with that, and then maybe we'll talk more in that vein?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to read it. And hi, all my friends out there. So this is Poetry Sunday. If love were ice cream, would you serve it before melting? If happiness were your present, would you accept it? If grief were disposable, would you keep recycling it? If sadness were paint, would you choose your own finish? If anger were optional, would you leave it unchecked? If friends were tax deductible, would you ever write them off? If parents were fine china, would you pick a different set? If life were so simple, would this poem even exist?
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's Poetry Sunday. A lot of those great questions by Mary Keating. And so, Mary, I always love guests who have done other things besides, poetry. And you've done so much. I mean, with the, going to law school, having an entire law practice, the scuba diving, which I want to hear more about too at some point. But I wonder, so what role has poetry played throughout your life? Is it something that you always did, or is it something and came back to, sort of took seriously later, or is it something that you found later on? Where was the sort of entry point for you in becoming a poet?
Well, my mom had every kid in our family, and there's 5 of us, and we memorized this poem called Strictly Germ Proof. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's a poem with very big words in it. So we're little kids reading The Antiseptic Baby and the Prophylactic Pup were playing in a garden when a bunny gambled up. And it goes through all these scientific words. And I kind of fell in love with the rhythm and rhyme of it. And then my parents were always playing Broadway shows, those are all really poems to music. And my dad wrote odes. So we were always writing poems, and I'm sure they were really terrible. And as I got older, I used to just express my thoughts in poems and memorize lots of poems, which was fun. It's a really good skill to just memorize a poem. And my family is very creative, so a lot of them write poetry. And then I went to law school, and I was an English religion major in college, and I wrote poems too, and some of them were published. And then I went to law school, and it just, like, the law just took over my life. There's so much you have to do and learn and read, and I wouldn't really write very seriously. But I did find, when I was having conflicting feelings and things, I would just write poems to myself, and it would help me sort out my feelings. And then about 10 years ago, I just needed some outlet. I couldn't just do law all the time. And so I started going to poetry groups, and I went to the Poet Salon in Fairfield, and I met wonderful people there. And I just started going to classes. I took classes from great teachers, and what's that poetry? There's something in Pennsylvania. I forget the name of it. I took the whole course in that, and I took a lot of free courses, and then I took paid courses, and then I started getting things published. And my first poem that was published by New Mobility magazine about how inaccessible hospitals are. Mm-hmm. And they don't even publish poetry. I just sent it out. I didn't know anything.
Oh, that's
and they
cool.
came back and they said, "We don't publish poetry, but we love your poem." And they published it. So it was really cool.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, the ways we find our ways back to it, into that kind of meaning. The interesting thing about this book, it's a memoir in verse, and it goes back all the way. You have like the entire life of Mary Keating played out, starting from the making of a New Year's baby. So we really get to hear, it's like an autobiography in verse, really. Do you want to read that poem, The Making of a New Year's Baby?
Yeah, that's a fun poem. And in the book, there's a picture of the article I refer to in it. And this poem is setting up like different themes in my book. And a lot of it has to do with time and chance and bending rules. So, the makings of a New Year's baby that might not have succeeded because my mother wanted to be a nun, or somebody drank too much, or my father never took the garbage out with perfect timing in a universe bearing 13.8 billion years of wiggle room. For me to be the first baby born in Westchester County in 1958, and when my parents a free year of diaper service, dinners out, and a knotted rug so worn by the time I became a teenager, no prizes survived, except a yellow-paged front article, omitting how my parents returned before midnight from their neighbor's New Year's Eve party, only to invite everyone over to our home to babysit my two older sisters, when my mother's water broke and my father broke the speed limit, until stopped by a policeman wondering, what's the rush? Who, upon discovering, escorted my parents at a pace so slow, my father passed him, flashing lights and all, to arrive at the hospital just in time for my birth certificate to be number 1, causing strangers throughout my life to remark, it was too bad my parents lost me as a tax deduction for 1957, until my father confessed he had claimed me, causing me to wonder if my perfect entry lost me everyone's promised 15 minutes before my life began, until I calculate the odds of being on a planet speeding 1,000 miles per second across billions of light years, but not fast enough to blur one result. I am a fucking miracle.
We'll grade into that. That was The Making of a New Year's Baby from Recalibrating Gravity by Mary Keating. And I wonder what you think, Mary, about what the purpose of writing poems is. Because I think there's always two ways to think of it. Maybe it's to share and record and have your life be out in a way that's sort of memorable in there, and then it's also to explore and understand your life. And when I see a big sweeping book, I'm always wondering about the force that drives writing a book. What is it that sort of compels you as a poet, would you say?
Well, first of all, I just love the form of poetry because it's very mathematical in some way and very logical, and it's like puzzle solving. And I love this rhythm and sound and music of it, and how it just travels time and space. And just one little poem, you can just start in the beginning of the universe and end up, in a particular place. So I think that poems kind of mimic our lives and time and how we look at time, because sometimes time is really fast and sometimes it's really slow and it's disjointed. It doesn't flow in a steady pace. And by writing poems, I think I understand. Sorry, my chair's talking to me. By writing poems, I think I understand life better. And then when I share them or I read somebody else's poem, and then I'm like, oh, I know that. I felt that. And it immerses us in feelings. So it's very immediate. I think it's a really human thing to do, to share our lives. So putting my whole story together, I also had a reason to do it because being disabled, there's so many bad stories out there, not true stories. And I wanted somebody could pick up a book and like, what was somebody's experience about becoming a paraplegic that wasn't a Hollywood version of a hero or just living everyday life and saying, oh, yeah, well, that's normal. That's like everybody else. So that was one of the reasons for putting my book together. And it was just fun. It was just fun to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you definitely. I mean, you can tell the fun you had, and it's such a fun cover too. Recalibrating Gravity. But let's hear another poem. Broken Bits is up next. Is the sort of story of your life progresses.
Yeah, so I thought so. Broken Bits is a form of poetry I learned in a class with Joan Kwan Glass, and it's a form where you don't finish a thought and you leave the reader sort of like you don't know where they are. And so when I had my accident, I didn't know what was happening, and everything was sort of in fragments. So this is Broken Bits. My accident spun my family's life upside down, shook the equilibrium of their globe, but they never let me know it. The middle child, the center of. Mom got the call, rushed to United Hospital. Face above mine, she started running through her children's names, calling them out as an order of birth, until she reached. The realization it was me lying there and not another took her a few minutes to. I was supposed to be safe at my boyfriend's house with his mom and dad, not lying in the ER, unable to move, in agony with. The doctors wouldn't give me any pain medication because they feared I had a concussion. They must never have broken their backs before because the night is a blur, but a few bits linger, time moving like a drunk. The nurses not allowing me to have a watch or a clock to figure out how fast or how. I'd borrowed my oldest sister's outfit that night, a silky dark green top that matched my eyes, Madras pants. I begged the nurses not to cut, as they weren't mine, and I'd promised. Barely bearing crushing pain. Unable to move or feel 3/4 of. Whispers of how our one ambulance town should have taken me first instead of the driver whose condition was. Mom finally convincing the doctors to give me Demerol to try and stop. Drifting in and out of moments. Waking in the freezer of the ICU, my dad sitting next to the bed, his hand through the gap in the rails, holding mine, his other holding the front page of the New York Times to show. His image, a smudge grouped in a line of other smudges, leaning hard to heal a hull, crewing a beauty of a sailboat in the middle of an oceanic race he left to be at my side. Telling him I wanted to know how fast time was passing, so he wrapped his pocket watch around the bed rail, hands nearing 3:30 a.m., and I realized.
Yeah, that was Broken Bits, and such a powerful poem, Mary. It's one of my favorites in the book. I love the way the form, gives the experience of having, sort of that drifting in and out of consciousness feel to it. And form is one of the things that you play with a lot in this book. There's ghazals, there's shape poems, there's all sorts of things. That's one of the things that make the book fun too, as well as a powerful story. How do you find the right form? Like you mentioned, this came from a class with Joan Kwan Glass. Did you know that this was how you're going to approach this poem? Like, how do you fit the content you're writing about to the form? Because it's so well done in this one.
Well, I didn't have any idea, and so when I was writing the book came together kind of a funny way. I was in that poet salon class, and one of the heads of it, Alison McBain, said I should enter a contest when words count, and because no poet had ever won. And I said, well, I don't have a book. And she goes, yeah, you have a book. So I took out all my poems and I put them all together. And I said, oh, this is telling the story of my life. But I noticed I was missing some poems. So when I was coming to write the one about my accident, the night of it, I was remembering the forms I had learned.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, that's a cool form because it's broken. It's like little bits. My spine is broken, like little bits. Time is like little bits. So it just sort of came together that way.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, it is. It's so well done in that poem, and tells that harrowing story really well. The book is called Recalibrating Gravity, which was a phrase, if I remember right, you're a therapist. You heard from a therapist at the time, and it kind of stuck with you for such a long time that you had to find a new center of gravity. Do you know how consciously aware of that phrase were you? And when did you know that it would be the title and the sort of organizing theme of the book?
Well, I've always been aware of gravity, like since I got paralyzed, because it's not my friend most of the time, unless I'm scuba diving or I'm somewhere where there's, I'm not feeling gravity or speeding in a car or flying down a hill in my wheelchair. So gravity also was to me was, something says, oh, that's so grave, or that's such a, gravity has that weight and that feel to it. So when I was thinking about what should I call my book, it took a long time. I mean, I had like poetry in motion, and that's taken. And then I was just trying to think of something. And when I thought of like, well, what is this really all, this poem, like all these poems, what are they doing? And they're sort of taking the reader through different phases of gravity. And the preface of the book is my made up definition of gravity, which sort of lays out the whole story of the book, which is fun. Like poetry is so much fun. You could just make up definitions. You can just have so much fun. And sometimes I wonder the fact that I didn't get an MFA, if that kind of freed me to be so experimental and just, I wasn't like, there was no like rules in my head for any of this. And it was such a freedom from being a lawyer where we have all these rules of how we have to write things and everything. And all of a sudden I'm in the poetry world and it's like I'm in the water. I can do anything in this world. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I wanted to ask more about that because it is one of those things where there's sort of a relation, but it's almost like a contrasting relationship between your other career and your career as a poet. Because lawyers, it's about being so precise with your language and trying not to let there be any loopholes and make sure that everything is really precise and persuasive and well defined. And in poetry, like it's so much lives in the ambiguity, which is kind of the opposite of that. So I was wondering, and I wondered this about all lawyer poets, but do you find it sort of a release to be able to write in that way that's intentionally using ambiguity, or do you find more that that's like they go hand in hand in a way that I don't understand? I'm kind of curious how the two ways of approaching language relate to each other for you.
Well, when you're writing contracts, sometimes you want to be really, really specific, and other times you do want to be ambiguous.
Oh yeah.
So lawyers sometimes, they're playing. So lawyers are always playing with language. And the thing about law is you're always looking for the precise word that fits something, and that's what you do in poetry too. You're always looking for a precise word that's going to fit something. And when you're doing litigation, you're telling stories all the time and you have to figure out a way to communicate to the jury and not speak lawyer talk because they'll just glaze over. So you have to learn to be a storyteller if you're going to be a good litigator. So the ambiguousness though of words, what I found was kind of fun was the multiple meanings of words, and people could, then this kind of came from contract law, because if you read a contract and something was ambiguous, and then you think of how somebody might interpret it. And when you're writing a poem and you use an ambiguous word, and you can layer your poem that way by using that ambiguity and make it more, you can use it to your advantage and have more fun and really just have surface of the poem, and then you dive deeper in and you have a deeper level meaning of the poem, and kind of lawyers too like to play with language and kind of I don't know what the word is. I don't know, show they're clever sometimes, but I didn't want to be clever in my poems. I hope I'm not. So I don't know, it's all dealing with language and communicating in various ways.
Yeah. Well, that's so fascinating. I don't know if you're ever familiar with the Legal Studies Forum, which is this. We did a Lawyer Poets issue way back in 2004, I think, of Rattle. So 22 years ago. And there was someone who was obsessed with just the idea. He was a lawyer too and a professor at some college. And he was obsessed with the idea that there were poets and lawyers at the same time, that were the same people. And so he made this Legal Studies Forum journal, which his mission was to chronicle every lawyer poet in the country and then have a poem from all of them. And it was this magazine that came out like looking like a big legal brief kind of document. But it was fascinating. It was a really fun issue to do. So it's really interesting to hear that crossover and how much words are involved. And of course, so many lawyers are English majors too. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, and you might not know this, but one of my first assignments at law school was to find a poem that was written in verse. I'm not a poem, a case that was written in verse. And there's actually a case law, and the poem is all written in verse. It's really funny, and it rhymes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear another poem, Mary.
Sure.
What makes a human human is up next.
Well, this fits right in because this is when I was in law school. This is where this poem came from, and this actually happened to me, and I was really stunned because I was at Yale Law School, which is supposed to be very progressive and all inclusive, and you begin to understand that there are thoughts that people hold in their heads that they're not even aware of that come out. So that's what this poem's about. What makes a human human? My classmates scribble down our law professor's words as if he's the second coming. Not me. I close my eyes, relax in my wheelchair, listen as he expands our minds to grasp. What makes a table a table? Is it the number of legs? What about a dog? What if the dog only has 3 legs? My body tenses as it senses where he's heading, eyes wide open when he asks, what makes the handicapped dog different than the real dog? His words slam into my solar plexus, leaving me cold-cocked, breathless, shocked. The scribbling scribes don't stop, don't pause, don't see how these words diminish me. I can't hear outside my head anymore. I don't know if anyone answers. The bell must have rung like it's rung at the end of every class. The students pack their packs, drift away just like any other day, while I stay alone with my professor. I want to cry out, call him out, but my lips are shut, my lungs deflated. Familiar choruses rise inside my head. You are not worthy. You are not our equal. I remember my high school principal telling me it was impossible for me to return after my accident. And when I figured out how, I endured being stuffed into the stink of the cafeteria elevator, its decomposing slop attaching daily to my wheels. Living on college campus, I had to go home to take a shower because the bathrooms weren't designed with me in mind. Not one law school dorm is accessible. I live segregated across the street, regulated to backdoor entries barred from buses, boats, subways, automobiles, trains, airplanes, bathrooms, banks, bars, stores, office buildings, restaurants, hospitals, doctors' offices, dentists. Every curb, every step, every design that doesn't acknowledge my humanity keeps trying to erase me. They all stem from a thoughtless thought. The hollow inside my body becomes the bowl of a bell. My professor's words that strike me, the mallet expounding, astounding wrongs that keep resounding until I crack. No matter the pain, the sheer weariness, my voice must be heard. I turn sorrow into a liberty song, swelling with each breath, rising from my depths, soaring past my lips. I ring out clear and strong. I am here. I am real. I belong.
Yeah, so that poem gets to the heart of one of the modes of your life, which is activism. And you mentioned already at the top of when we were talking about the way that disabled people are portrayed so often as either tragic or heroic and sort of not as human beings. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so, it's really interesting as I've gone through my life because when I first had my accident, um, every people that didn't know me, they would just stare at me or they'd speak really loudly to me as if I couldn't hear, or they'd talk over my head, or they'd ask my friends what I'd like to eat, as if I didn't have a voice. And I remember one time I'd gone down to Washington and I was at this convention. It was probably when I was first working at IBM. It was the President's Committee on the Employment of the Handicapped. And they use the word handicap, which people don't really like now. And I went out to dinner with a guy who was blind in a wheelchair and a woman who was deaf. And then there's me in my wheelchair. And we get to this restaurant and the people are like totally freaking out because they just don't know how to deal. And they're talking behind the deaf woman's back, and I'm saying, well, she can't hear you because she reads lips, and they hand the guy the menu, and I go, well, he can't really read the menu because he's blind, and they were just all sort of discombobulated. But I think one of the problems is that for so long, disabled people have been segregated or put to the side, and society is not built with accessibility from the start, and it's sort of an afterthought. And I'm really hoping that we start building things from the start with the access, because when I'm in a place where there's open doors and there are no stairs and there are bathrooms, then I can go anywhere and I can be totally independent. I lived by myself for 10 years before I got married, and I worked and I started my own business. And so I was just constantly pushing to do things, but I ran into so many barriers. And even today, like in the poetry community, people hold open mics upstairs and they don't think about, well, you can just get carried upstairs, but that's very dangerous because if I get dropped, I can, lose a whole year of my life or break a bone. So access is really important. And when I was at Yale, it really wasn't that accessible. So I started a whole big campaign there, and really it was got the whole campus to become more accessible. And they found out I was pretty much an activist, so they asked me to become the first student liaison there, to talk to the administration. But then they called me up and asked me, where should they put the reader printer for the blind? And I said, I'm not blind. You have to ask somebody who's blind. Don't ask me. Just because I have a disability, I don't have like every disability. So there's a lot going on. And unfortunately now with the new administration, they're starting to erode our civil rights and trying to say that this really important case law isn't really how it should be read. And, so there's a lot of scary things going on right now in the disability community.
Oh, really? So I was wondering, like, how much better things have gotten over the years, and did you feel like things have progressed as far as that, or not?
Oh yeah, things have progressed a lot. So when I was first injured and I lived in a hometown that didn't have ramps or curb cuts, I actually was told a story, got it published, about trying to get my brother a gift. And then the Handicap Society wrote a rebuttal that we didn't need curb cuts and ramps. And I'm like, what are they talking about? So my dad gave me the advice to go to the Human Rights Commission, which I did. And I got the mayor to come downtown in a wheelchair. And he realized he couldn't get around in his town. He couldn't get into his office. So he put in ramps and curb cuts. This is like years before the ADA. And then, so fighting to get the first big disability law was the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, where places that received federal funding had to be accessible. And that was really good for me to be able to go to school and tell the places they needed to have access. But regular private places didn't have to till the ADA was passed. And disabled people had to crawl up the steps of the Capitol to get that passed.
Oh, wow.
And to get the Rehabilitation Act passed in 1973, Judy Heumann, a big disability rights advocate, had a huge sit-in San Francisco at the government office, and that they weren't giving them food and they were trying to get them to get out. And they cut off all their communication. So the deaf people would go out the window and communicate to other deaf people. They couldn't stop them from doing that. And then the Hell's Angels stepped in and like fed them. So there's this whole huge history that's always going on. So slowly, like things would be better. But sometimes people would like, why do we have to put in these ramps, or why do we have to put in curb cuts? Why do we have to put in, have interpreters? Why do we have to? But you'd see that they were using these things, like people use closed caption all the time, and all the improvements that were done, people use like all the time. So things had gotten a lot better, but you have to keep on top of it because people will start stuffing the accessible bathroom with chairs and boxes, and then you go there and you can't even get in. And it's like, what's that? That's not access. So even though things are accessible, they're, designed technically sometimes to be accessible, but when you're disabled and try to use them, you can't. They're not designed right, or people block the access. And now I'm not really sure where we are with the changes in the law. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing story, and one really that should be more prominently known. All of the things that went. It's another civil rights movement, and it's really interesting to hear about, and another reason why books like these are so important. Let's move on to another poem. Mary, the next one is A Brief History of Forever.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite poems. So this was a prompt. Oh, and the other poem I read, that was first published in Southwest Santa Fe Writers Project, that poem. This poem was published first in Sixfold. It's A Brief History of Forever, and the job was to take like a long hit, like something really long, and condense it to one page and make it a multi-part poem. I'm not going to read like 1, 2, or 3. I'm just going to read the poem. We meet in 4th grade at Osborne. You almost catch me in Boys Chase Girls, then Girls Chase Boys. I sit behind you. Sorry, I lost my place. I sit behind you in homeroom at Rye High because I'm a K and you're an H. In 9th grade, you move out of town. Miss me being in an infamous car accident the next year. At Manhattanville, I discover you're in my freshman class working behind the snack bar. You don't seem to mind me in a wheelchair. You whisk me away to an evening party in Massachusetts while you're manic. You could be my Prince Charming until I never want to see your movie star face again. 9 years later, fresh out of law school, I tell God, I'm ready to get a husband. I bump into you browsing records at Caldor's. You take me to the city, melt me by the kiss at the Met. You keep punctuating. We're not boyfriend-girlfriend. Our bodies punctuate differently until you disappear with my fairy tale dreams. I get it. You think you can't handle a forever disability. If I weren't permanently paralyzed, I'd walk away from it too. Let's not mention your diagnoses. In Albuquerque, Tom Petty sings to you, it's wake-up time. My phone rings in White Plains, New York. You move across the U.S., overflowing my apartment, intertwining our lives. 5 years engaged, we elope and marry at Sweetheart Rock. While I'm getting beautified, you commit your vows to memory. Surprise me, as you do for a lifetime, with just how much you love me.
Yeah, such a sweet poem. There's A Brief History of Forever by Mary Keating from her book, Recalibrating Gravity. Mary, so I want to ask about, because it's such a wonderful cover, the scuba diving image that you have is right behind you too, so I guess I don't have to hold up the book. But I talk a little bit about scuba diving because that's such an interesting thing, given the title of the book and everything, and how the cover came to be. Like, how did you decide on that cover too?
Sure. So I was always a good swimmer, and when I had my accident, I had to learn to swim again because I couldn't use my feet, and it was a little scary. So when I was in the rehab center, they put me in like this harness, and I actually had an Army sergeant trying to teach me to swim. And I couldn't swim with like all this stuff on me. I'm like, just get all this stuff off me. So I slowly learned to swim, and it was so freeing. And they at the rehab hospital was surprising because they never had anybody who was paralyzed swim in the pool. Shouldn't make any sense. I was also the youngest person there. I was 15, and everybody else was like 60 or 70 or something. So I was just this kid there. So I swam all the time. So I go to law school and I become a lawyer, and I'm having a client comes in with his mom. And he turns to me and he says, I'd like to teach you to scuba dive. And I never thought of like scuba diving. Like, what's that? That's what, they do on TV and adventures. He goes, no, you could learn. So he finally convinces me. I gave him a lot of resistance, but he finally convinces me to go on a trip with my good friend Dawn from college. So we go down. I said, do you want to go on a trip like with a bunch of scuba divers to the Cayman Islands? I mean, we'll just hang out, see what it's like. And we had nothing else to do. So he said, yeah, sure. So we go there and I'm snorkeling, and I get they carry me into the ocean, and I have, life jacket on it. I'm snorkeling, and we're not even in a nice place at the Cayman Islands, like where the ships come in. And I see this squid, three squid looking at me. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then I went to Stingray City in Cayman, which is famous. And all these stingrays come and they get fed. And it's not very deep. It's like 12 feet or something. And all the scuba divers are down below, and they're, feeding the stingrays. I'm like, okay, I want to learn to do this. So going to class was not easy. I had to get like carried up and down stairs. I had to like lie on the ground and put on a wetsuit. Just putting on a wetsuit when you're not paralyzed is hard. This is really hard. Then I had to put on a weight and a tank and get into a pool. Like, this is all like so counterintuitive. But I did it, and I got in the water. And I did my certification dive in the Caymans. And when I took off, you have to take off your mask when you're in the middle of the water. And I was like 30 feet below water, and then put it back on. And when I took off my mask, all this water goes up my nose, and I'm choking. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to die on my first dive. And I thought, well, what happens when I'm above ground? I breathe, right, to stop choking. And I said, I got 100 pounds of air strapped to my back, so I'm just going to keep breathing. I got my mask back on, and then I went out of the water, and my instructor said I'm a very cool cucumber. But it was really cool to be in the water because you learn to control where you are with your breath. So if you breathe a lot, you go up and then exhale a little. Or if you exhale a lot and breathe more, you go, let's get this mixed up. But you control where you are in the water without using your buoyancy and control jacket. And you can just hang. And there's no sounds down there, like just your air and the air bubbles going. And there's just fish, and there are no signs, and there are no phones ringing. It's just so beautiful down there. Oh. And there's this one place called Trinity Caves. We came out through a tunnel, and it opens up in this huge blue, like midnight blue, and you feel like you're flying. And this beautiful eagle ray just was like flying through the distance. It's just such a cool world down there.
Yeah, I love it, as a cover of a poetry book, because it feels like such a metaphor for poetry itself. So many times I think about poetry as like a kind of fishing into your own subconscious, because there's a surface world that you're on top of that is like the world you're used to and know. And then you go underneath the surface and everything is so different and like magical, and things that you don't see are there, right? So do you think that there is a parallel to that? Like the joy of going underwater there is similar to the joy of going under the water of your consciousness, so to speak, and being a poet or artist of any kind?
I never thought of that, but I think there is like a connection. And the way the cover came to be is in this contest that I was in, we had to come up with a cover. And I just looked at a whole bunch of covers I liked, and I liked that cover on Lessons of Chemistry, and there's like Liar's Poker. And they're all like these really funny, simple books, book covers. And so I told the artist everything I liked. I told her I was a scuba diver and I wanted a joke. So it's kind of funny that somebody's like scuba diving in a glass, but it's half empty or half full. And she's got a lifeline coming down from heaven, because my book's spiritual. And then, she's holding on to gravity, and there's a fish keeping her company. But the other thing that I've been thinking a lot, because I wrote this poem, Open Communities by Design, and it starts out where I ask the people to imagine that their community lives under the water. And so when you're disabled, you have to rely on your equipment to survive. And so, it's kind of a sort of a thing about that too. You're like in an unexplored world where you need equipment to get around. But I never thought about your unconscious, diving into your unconscious is what we're doing all the time with poetry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a fascinating metaphor too for disability, is to relying on that. I hadn't thought about that, but that's another great way that this title and cover really works. I wonder too about using poetry as advocacy. Is there something about poetry that you think can do something that like a lawsuit or an argument or a policy can't? As far as being useful for advocacy itself. Do you think there's a special role for poetry in that?
Oh yeah, because when I read that poem, I was in an open mic contest and I read this poem and I was the only poet there and I was the only one reading a poem. And you have to memorize. It's like 5 minute long poem, and it starts out with that whole imagery of going underwater, and then all of a sudden we encounter sharks. And they fish are like the fish is my community. And they're not paying any attention to me, and I can't interact with them unless I have all this equipment with me. And so the people told me afterward that they really started to like make the connections, and they felt. So when you use poetry, you feel what the person's going through. It's not like someone's telling you, oh, it was really bad at it was really bad accident or something. But when, like with Broken Bits, like it brought you into the night and how it felt. So poetry makes it immediate. Like you're always talking about that in Critique of the Week. Want the person to be you, like in the poem, experiencing it. And poems that are written well make you experience it. And when you experience something, you become, I think, more open and more empathetic to understanding how somebody else feels. I was walking along the beach the other day with my friend Kathy, and I'm thinking, you ever think about how many people in the world there are? And they all have different thoughts, and they're all viewing the world a different way, and nobody's seeing it the same. And poetry is a way where you can read something someone else wrote and see how they're seeing the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, really well said. And Broken Bitch is such a great example of that. It's not words, and we're not being told a story. It's experience. Like we're experiencing that in the first person, like as we're there, and you get that cutoff sense works so well. Let's see. So I should say at this point, if you're enjoying this conversation, make sure to click the like button. If you haven't yet, clicking the like button always helps spread this poetry around later. Also, if you have any questions for Mary, leave them in the chat window, especially on YouTube. That's the one I pay most attention to. Put question all in bold, like Leslie Ann Skechterson just did, and that helps me see if there's a question as I'm scrolling back up through the comments. Let's hear the next poem first, Mary. Chaos.
Sure.
Out of order, yeah.
Let's go to that one. That one. Oh, okay. That one is Chaos Out of Order.
Yeah.
That's a pantoum. Yeah, this is a good form for what the subject matter is. Chaos out of order. This I know down to my bones, as you create chaos out of order. I love you. Love you. I love you. 24 hours back and forth as you create chaos out of order, trying to empty your basement. 24 hours back and forth like a robot going awry, trying to empty your basement. Same boxes up, same boxes down. Like a robot going awry. Back and forth, return, repeat. Boxes up, same boxes down. I worry at the first signs, get no rest. Back and forth, return, repeat. You too sense something's amiss. I worry at the first signs, get no rest as you fear spontaneous combustion. You too sense something's amiss, like glue left too long in the sun, as you fear spontaneous combustion. As your brain imprisoned your mind like glue left too long in the sun. I didn't know enough before to call, as your brain imprisoned your mind, believing when you say, I'm okay. I didn't know enough to call 911, always a lifeline, until now. Wanting to believe I'm okay, I won't risk you dying locked in a ward. 911 always a lifeline. Until now, as hospitals morph into a pandemic's death row. I won't risk you dying in a locked ward while your mind's stuck in an endless loop as hospitals morph into a pandemic's death row. I play the serenity prayer in my head while your mind's stuck in an endless loop. Grasp at your comfort in repetition. I play the serenity prayer in my head. But the respite is short. I grasp your comfort in repetition. I love you. I love you. I love you. But the respite is short. This I know, down to my bones.
Yeah, great use of the pantoum, like you said, and that's a perfect time to pass on Leslie Ann Sketcherson's question. She says, first of all, love how you live life, but then how many of your memoir poems arose from prompts? Do you find prompts essential to writing memoir? And I guess it's always like a chicken and the egg thing. But, did you, for this poem, was it like that you were trying to write a pantoum that led you to this topic, or did you know that you wanted to write about this topic and that led you to the pantoum? And then how much the variety and things like that in this book are prompts? Is that something that you really found valuable in the memoir process?
Yes, I think that prompts are so helpful because when we get a prompt, and so many of your guests have said this, and a lot of their books are from you and Katie's prompts, is a prompt like breaks us out of, oh, we're going to write about this. So you're not like, I'm going to sit down and write a poem today about, mental illness. So I was thinking, well, I'm going to write a pantoum. And I was thinking of like, well, what has like kind of a repetitive thing? Because we were supposed to write this in this form. And I know a lot of people that have had, problems, and especially being an advocate for people. And I thought this is a really great form for that because it's so repetitive and like someone's stuck in this like world and they can't seem to break out of it. Um, but yeah, when I think about a lot of the poems, because I was thinking about that when I listened to Hammett talking and Katie talking, like what poems in here came from prompts, and I think that most of them, say maybe like 50% of them are from prompts. And I just find prompts so so helpful because they just make us think a different way, and you come up with a poem you never would have come up with before, or try something you've never tried. Oh, I know this. I think this was from my poetry group, Poet Salon, and I was supposed to write a poem in a pantoum. Um, And also, poetry groups are so important to be in, to share the poems. And there's a lot of great ones going on, and we read our poems to each other and get gentle feedback. I was in a mean poetry group once, and the poets there are nasty. I'm like, I don't want to be here. Um, so I like to stay with the nice poetry groups that are constructive, but they're gentle.
Yeah, well, definitely. Let's see. Well, let's hear. We have two poems left here. Do you want to read A Poet's Heart?
Oh, sure. So this is a fun poem. This poem, this first appeared in Scribes Micro, which I'm actually now the poetry editor for, and they nominated me for a pushcart for this. So I wanted to write. I have a lot of shade poems in my book, and one of them's Ouroboros Frayed, which I had written not as a shade poem, and one of the poets suggested why don't you turn it? She was an artist. She goes, why don't you turn that poem into the Ouroboros shape, which I did, which was fun. So this one is shaped like a heart. A poet's heart. True love, the treasure in most fairy tales. Labrador kisses slime in your face. Healthcare aides going to work in a pandemic. Parents creating safe nests to surround their children. An athlete's devotion to win gold at the Olympic Games. Giving your undivided attention for no personal gain. Insides of marshmallows heating on a campfire. Adult children caring for parents in old age. School teachers showing up despite risk. An artist lost in creation of beauty. A dead mouse from your feline. Red roses unfolding bloom. Soldiers defending liberty. A baby's first breath. You and me forever.
Yeah, another sweet poem that's a poet's heart, shaped like a heart, from Mary Keating from her book Recalibrating Gravity. And there is a lot of sort of fun and playfulness, humor in this book, lighter things. Do you find, first of all, do you think that it's an advantage to not having gone through the MFA route and to learn through groups and stuff to keep the poetry sort of fun and playful in that way? Is that something that you think about at all or a lot? Or, yeah.
Yeah, I do. My sister Carolyn's in the middle of an MFA program, and she's not doing a lot of the poetry, but I listened to all the. She was in one before, and there were like all these rules, and I kind of thought it was stifling her writing. Like we have to do X and X and X and X, and I just sort of went bleh, just did whatever I wanted. And I mean, I don't know what it's like to be in an MFA program just from what people say, but I've read, like a lot of the MFA programs. Sounds like people are just writing similar styles. So I think there's something to just encountering something with no rules to it, and you don't really know. You have to follow a rule.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, poetry has its rules. And I didn't know how to put together a book. I just sort of did it. So there's a real spirit of adventure in our family. We just sort of like go off and do things because our parents would just want us to always try different things. So we weren't afraid. And we weren't really, I mean, they were kind of critical and you had to succeed, but I don't think we were that afraid of failing. And we were just sort of adventurous spirits. And when I had my accident, my dad didn't want me to lose that. He really wanted me to experience the world. So he would create like all these ways I could get around, and he made sure I had a van that I could drive. And my mother would force me to do things. I'm like, one day my van broke and she made me go off and, figure it out myself. So when I was doing this book, I kind of like figured it out myself. And then I'd ask people for help or suggestions or what I could do. So if you approach something, you have to follow the rules of the poetry, but I don't think you have to follow the rules of how you approach poetry, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely does. Let's see, a sort of a follow-up question from Neil Such says, MBA guy here without an MFA. How would you suggest someone like me find a poetry group?
Oh, well, I don't know where you live, but there's Meetup. So I found mine through Meetup. Tons of libraries have poetry groups. And then we have the Rattle poetry group that meets every Friday, which is so helpful. Um, there's and joining if there's a lot of free classes you can take. What is that? Is the Iowa something course writing course, or maybe that's for something else. What is that course in Pennsylvania that has poetry? It's like a big thing. It's a free
Um,
course.
hmm.
It's really good. I took it. They have it every year and it's for free. But go to your local library and ask if there are any poetry groups available and look at Meetup.
Yeah, and online too. I think one of the things I love that I don't do anymore, but back early on, is just having a group that met every other Tuesday at a Barnes and Noble and just shared what we wrote the last 2 weeks and sort of passed it around at a little table drinking some coffee. Definitely something that I think people should look for.
And the Connecticut each state has their own poetry society.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
can contact the state poetry society,
Hmm.
where there's actually a federation of state poetry societies, and you can contact them too.
Yeah. Elizabeth Bouquet says it Penn Modpo, which I've never
Oh,
heard of, so I
that's
have to
right.
check it out. Modpo. Oh, yeah, and
Yeah,
Sean Avingo Sanders says that too.
yeah, that's right.
Um,
Thanks.
yeah. Another question from Joanna Pendleton. She says, do you do many revisions of your poems? And do you have a favorite or favorites you've written? So it's kind of two questions there from Joanna.
Yes, I rewrite a lot. I write first, I just sort of throw it out on the page, and then I look at it and try to condense it and see if it's making sense. And then I'm looking for sounds and can I put in interior rhymes and or is this fitting the form? So I do a lot of revision. Um, I think you have to do a lot of revision unless once in a while like a poem just comes to you. Or a very short poems, probably not. And then the second question, my favorite poems. I didn't publish the poem, put this poem here, but it's How to Survive in a Wheelchair, which was inspired by reading a poem, How Do You Put on an Obi? And I thought, what do I know how to do? So I know how to survive in a wheelchair. And it's a kind of a snarky, fun poem. Um, and that's one of mine. And the last poem I'm going to read is one of my favorite poems. And the poem about my husband. I have the most loving, wonderful husband, and he's probably hi Dan. He's just a sweetheart, and he and I have so much fun together. And he loves listening to my poetry. And he was so touched. He like keeps my book by his bed, and he tells people it's great, and it always surprises me. But it's nice to have somebody like that.
Yeah. Well, that definitely is. And there's some sweet poems in this book for sure. I wanted to ask one more thing before we move on about marketing, because you've done such a great job with that. And you said when we were talking before that it's something you had to learn, but you've done such a great job with it. I mean, the book is all over the place. There are reviews and things. There's, societies, there's blurbs everywhere. And it seems like it's doing really well, and it's such a hard thing for poets because we sit, in a closet maybe and write our poems, and then we bring them out in the world and we're like, here they are. And then we don't know what to do. So what advice do you have for people? Because I think you have done a great job. It's pretty clear that you have. What advice do you have for poets trying to get a book into more people's hands?
Oh, thanks. Well, it's a real, there are so many things that you have to learn. I think it's important to be on social media to begin with, and a lot of people poo-poo it, but it seems like most of us are on Facebook and we communicate that way. So starting to get a Facebook account and get a Goodreads account, and then I go to a lot of live events. So there's two groups in Connecticut. There's Connecticut Book Festivals and Nutmeg Lit Fest. And they're two free groups that writers can go to. And they set up free tables and you go to all over the place and you try to sell your book. So funny. It's like spend all day and you sell like 4 books. You're like, oh, wow, I made like $3 or something, but it's good to be out there and go to so when you get a book published, you should have a book launch. I was lucky to have mine at a museum, a really cool modern museum in Westport. And then tell all your friends. I sort of had like an advantage to most people because I started my business from scratch and nobody knew I was a lawyer and I had to get clients. So I kind of knew what it was like to market. And then I went to libraries, and libraries love to have authors there, and they'll help advertise for you. And then when you get it, you should advertise on Nextdoor and, all your events a couple times. I hope I don't bore people to death with them all, and so going to libraries, and then I got onto some talk shows, which I think is important because then people start listening to that, and then talk to other writers and poets and get to know them. So I know a lot of writers in addition to poets, and they're so nice. They like help spread the word of your work, and you spread the word of theirs, and opportunities come in and go to readings, and and I always tell people about my book. So I have a mug with my little book on here, and I'll see somebody down and they go, oh, you know what? I wrote a book. I'm very, very. And when I'm at the local author events, all the authors are sitting behind the table and they're not engaging. So I always just say to the people, would you like to meet a local author? And they sort of like, okay. And they come up and they talk to you. Oh. So I think you have to be yourself whenever you're doing. So if you're a wallflower, that might be hard to do. But if you're yourself and you get to do readings and somehow it just kind of snowballs and get reviews. People are very nice to write. Reviews are really important for writers and authors. It helps the algorithms. And so if you read a really good book of another author, or just post it and give them us 5 stars, it takes you 2 seconds to go on and do that. So we should all support one another. I hope that answers the question.
No, it definitely, really great advice. And people, it's something everybody who cares about writing poems and making books needs to know. So we really appreciate that. Okay, one more thing before we go to the last poem. I wonder, because it is such a sweeping autobiography of a book. What are you working on now, given that? Like, do you feel like, you told the life story and so you're or is it continuing this process? Is there some sort of avenue that you find yourself going down next?
Well, I did write a new poetry book. Um, and I don't know if I should break it up into chapbooks or just have this big poetry book. And a lot of it is it's different than this. It's not really autobiographical. Of course, I guess all our poems are. And the beginning part is it's sort of like a passage from like you're born and then reimagining fairy tales, and then you go through like the dark night of the soul, and then you come out to the light. It's kind of like the way the book goes. And I don't know if it's working or not. I need to workshop it with some people. Um, but I do really would love to write a kind of like the stories. I think people like the way I tell stories of things that have happened to me. And I mean, this is just like a few things. There's a lot of stuff that's happened. I lost my voice. I got thyroid cancer.
Oh, really?
And I'm getting hoarse now because I have a paralyzed vocal cord and I couldn't speak. And I had to learn to speak again.
Oh, wow.
And being a paraplegic and not being able to yell, like I was in the shower and like, what if I fall? My husband's not going to know. So I had to like pound on the ground to get attention. So I realized how important voice is. And when you're disabled, people are always trying to speak for you. So to me, to publish this book was like, so wow. And people are listening, which is great. So I'd like to write more books, and I'm not quite sure the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I have one. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, we're really, everybody feels very inspired just by, how much sort of love and positively, lovely and generous spirit, says Michelle Fetter. And yeah, I mean, everybody just feels that as you talk about your life in these poems in the book. Let's wrap it up with one last poem. I go back to May 1973, which you mentioned is one of your favorites.
Yeah, then this was Sharon Alt's sort of a take on hers, which was weird because she went back to May 1937, right? It was like flipping that. It was weird. I go back to May, and this was published in One Art, so I'm very happy about that. I go back to May 1973, to the night I crashed, and see myself, a long, tender lily, unaware of her grace, as she's about to get into a Mustang, to leave a party with someone she barely knows because her boyfriend is ignoring her. She hasn't learned yet how oak doesn't bend at 120 miles per hour, how her spine can snap with those long green stems forever. I want to run to her on legs I got to use my whole life, not just until 15. Tell her to turn back. Say to her boyfriend she wants to go home, to skip up the stairs to her bedroom, shed her clothes, jump into the shower, then snuggle into bed with her teddy bear, with the whisper of dreams that sleep inside. What would her life be like if I did go home that night and the next day was like every other day? I leave her as she opens the door, allow her the time to come find me.
Yeah, that was I Go Back to May 1973 by Mary Keating from her book, Recalibrating Gravity.
No, it's not in the book.
Oh, sorry, that's not in the book. Well, that's another poem, though, from One Art. But your wonderful book, Recalibrating Gravity, is right here. Mary, thanks so much for being a guest tonight. It has been such a pleasure getting to know you better and exploring this book and experiencing that all too, and your personality and warmth. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it was such a pleasure, and thanks everyone for listening, and thank you for all Tim and you and Katie do for Poetry World. It's wonderful.
Well, definitely our pleasure. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Mary Keating. And again, you can find Mary's book, Recalibrating Gravity, anything new that comes out as well at her website, which is marykeatingpoet.com. That's MaryKeating poet.com. marykeatingpoet.com. Find Recalibrating Gravity there. And and get to know Mary, friend her on Facebook. Wonderful person there, too. All right, so we're going to take a quick break and go to our invited prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a poem that's a page or longer and then edit it down to a maximum of 14 lines. Include both versions of your poem in the submission with a shorter poem first. So there you go. Make sure that you're not cheating, but we're going to only read the short 14-line poem. That's your prompt for this week. If you received an invite, join the Zoom now, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. I am here with our creative editor, our prompt poems editor, and my wife, Katie Dozier. How you doing, Katie?
I'm doing great. It was so wonderful to hear from Mary. And she really does bring such warmth to the Rattle community. And it was great to hear you guys get to chat finally. It felt like a long time coming, that one.
Yeah, it definitely did. I love when that happens, when it's people we know and it's part of this community, and then they have books. And it is a really wonderful thing to get to be able to share it. You get to know them even better than we already do.
I particularly found, she was like, making me want to become a lawyer for what she was talking about with the language precision. Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I love the idea of it not being, like, wanting it not to be precise.
I know. It was so interesting.
As soon as she said that, I was like, of course, those lawyers, they want to be imprecise sometimes.
But I think it's so interesting in editing poems. Sometimes you do, let's say that the traditional poetry world all too often picks to be overly ambiguous, but sometimes you want to be ambiguous still.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the prompt for this week is to write a poem that was longer and then shrink it down to the max of 14 lines. So what did you do with it? Did you have any trouble with this?
I found this more challenging than I anticipated, actually, because I have really trained myself to just get the poem out. So I had to really just force the stream of consciousness. And then I don't know if this counts, but basically I forced the page, it came out, and then I wrote the poem. So that's what we have. And I edited by cutting off the first page.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear this.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Bicycle thieves. Black and white and black. Wheels and spokes and tires and horns. Every which way roam the piazza of despair, the way cinematography clings but only belongs to the air. Taking it back.
Yeah, those bicycle thieves. And I love, both the haiku, the monoku at the end, and that poem condensing that movie, which we just watched not too long ago.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. And it was surprising, I thought.
I almost made this the next prompt, which it is not, but about a classic movie type prompt. But then I was like, well, I can't do that. I just wrote the poem for that. So I couldn't, but in the future, I think we'll have to explore. It's a lot. It's really interesting to look back and see how far movies have come too.
Yeah.
Even though I still love that movie.
It was beautiful. It was like watching, I felt like being in an art gallery of black and white photography or something.
Yeah, I first watched that in my Italian cinema class in college. All right. Well, what did you come up with?
So this was your idea, kind of, because you were like, you should write a poem about this, which was that
wow,
super
you never
boring,
listen to me when I say that. This is fascinating.
that super boring dream I was telling you
Oh my
about.
gosh, no. That's what you listened to me about.
I know, really. So I went back to this, and I forgot about this guy, but I had a few poems that are Poetry Man.
Poetry Man. He's reappearing. Wow. It's been like 4 years.
I know. So I have a few of these Poetry Men. This was one, there was a prompt that was like, make up a fake superhero or something.
Yeah.
So it was Poetry Man. He goes solving.
Except he's real, so that was cheating.
That's true. But he goes around, solving crime by making the rhymes and stuff like that, So anyway, this is Poetry Man at the Department of Deferred Decisions. And this is my dream the other day. Even the things he likes the least are like other things he doesn't like. How the government's offices stack like the bricks they're built from. How the whitewash over the whitewash of the evening's graffiti makes layers of latex as thick as vinyl but variegated as a gobstopper glued to the wall like gum. How a giant Jabberwocky would love to lick its tasteless richness as it hung like a clapper in the bell of the cave of its mouth. Inside, the plastic chairs are like those in a schoolhouse, but as blue as the days that he filled them. He checks in at a kiosk. His number is fresh out of date. To pass what passes for time, he finds a poem in the eye charts that line the halls. He's a toe-pied fool fed to the Z of his feet. Finally, he's called to the kiosk where he's asked to endorse a form he photocopied last week. If he could only produce the passport, they could expedite the official delay. He can almost feel the weight of the weight in his pocket, so unlike a thing that he'd like. There you go. That was my super boring bureaucratic dream. Poetry Man at the Department of Deferred Decisions.
It was funny though. It was like the kids stopped asking about your dreams when you told them you dreamed about
it was
the
just
DMV.
form after form. It was rough. It wasn't really the DMV. It was like some random thing that made no sense.
The thing is that the DMV in our area is actually great, and I find myself knocking them even though it's outside. It's welcome. They're really nice there.
Yeah, it's a tradition to knock the DMV.
Yeah, it is.
What can you do? All right. Well, let's go next to our very own community host, Dick Westheimer. Hey, Dick, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and I just loved the interview. Mary was just a great interviewee, and I enjoyed it immensely.
Okay, microphone closer to you, Dick.
Oh, sorry, it's very close to me, but I'll turn up the volume here. I apologize.
Oh, there we go.
Nice.
There's
that's much
more
better.
of that Dick Westheimer richness to his timbre. Yeah, that's good.
There's the Westheimer richness.
Oh, wow, that's really now
that's
I'm going to lulling
voice,
me into a nice stream.
The pear-shaped tones. Well, again, I wish you could have been with us last night. Roberta was just great. She taught I forgot.
Rich Yeoman's poem, right? I do know that. But
yeah, she taught a Rich Yeoman's poem, and Rich was there.
Oh, how nice.
And we had 55. It was more than one Zoom screen. And I think I had 44 readers. And Roberta, bless her, my pitch to guest hosts is they can leave at 9 even if we're not done, and we'll get their poem in at 8:45. She just stuck with it, and she had these wonderful comments, and I think people felt really supported
that's
by
wonderful.
her. And I hope they learned a lot about Haibun and Haiku from her, just giving these little kind of comments about their work. So it was terrific.
Yeah,
we had a lot of
Haibun.
Haibun.
So many wonderful things in such a short span of time. I listened to a lecture at a haiku conference of hers once, and I was just sat there like with my mouth agape.
And she wrote me after the reading, "Wow, that was awesome. I enjoyed it immensely," with all sorts of emoji. So despite the fact that I was juggling to get through all those readers and keep the order straight.
Well, good job. Thanks for your work.
Yeah, it was terrific. And I want to share with folks who are guest hosts this month. It's Valentina Knupp. That's on September 27th of this year.
Great.
So she's already chosen her poem. She's already sent me the poem that she's going to read
Wow.
at the end.
That's
She
impressive.
yeah, she said she wanted to pick her poem so nobody else would.
Nice. I like that. Good.
So it's terrific. People are so gracious, and they love the event, and they love the reading, and what a treat for me.
Well, thank you.
And speaking, Katie, I'm so glad to hear that you struggled and did a stream of consciousness thing, because that's just what I did. I don't keep a journal, but I sort of tried to keep a lineated journal entry, and then figure out if there was a poem in there. And I dragged it out line by line, and this is it. And this is another one in my series of poems that healed me, which I think, I know if that's what they do, that's good enough for me.
Wow.
From somewhere once light, time has come and gone. From somewhere once light, this time has come and gone. It's past noon, and I'm still in my underwear. I've not done the dinner dishes, or swept the sidewalk, or started my new workout regime. My doc says my bones are thinning, and repeats the words breaking a hip and weight-bearing exercise, as if those phrases will seep calcium back into my bones. I am mesmerized by the heat and the sun-sweetened sheets, the crickets' chirr, and the lure of the bed still unmade. My wife says she'd pick the raspberries, but I let the canes grow so tall she can't reach them without a ladder, and no matter how much she wants to help me, she's got a life. I promised myself that I'd start mine while she's gone, because alone I'll be fine. Then I binge YouTube all morning. I could cancel my subscription, but what would I do with my time?
Well, Dick, I think that this one makes me feel a little bit more entitled to an occasional gluttonous day. I thought you as a farmer had no days off ever, so I'm glad to hear that's not accurate, though.
Well, and it's sometimes it's more than a day. Sometimes it's just sort of the doldrums, or just something where you just and I know you can't afford that, right?
Not right now, at least.
Right, but
Yeah.
it's something I fall into occasionally, and this poem dragged me out, so I appreciate it.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for everything, Dick, and great job hosting it. I
Yeah,
always love
thank
getting
you.
the compliments afterwards, as if I had anything to do with it.
You did. Bye.
Hi.
Thanks, Dick. Yeah, that was Dick Westheimer with From Somewhere Once Light. This time has come and gone. Let's go next to Elizabeth Boquet, who is, as Katie mentioned earlier, it's very late where you are, Elizabeth, right?
Hi, yeah, well, it's 3:30 in the morning.
Whew,
I
yeah.
feel
I'm in
guilty.
Switzerland.
I did reply and say that we would
You
read your
did.
poem and I didn't want to mess up your sleep schedule, but we really appreciate you being here.
Well, I really appreciate being here too, and all that you two do to keep the poetry alive for people like me who aren't in the States. And yeah, it's been a great experience. So, should I just go ahead? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Great.
Yes. Okay. It's just Mary. One thing before I read it, Mary had two lines, and it was, "What makes a table? Is it the number of legs?" And this poem, Sunday Breakfast, is from a memoir in which I explore what makes a family, because I was born the youngest of three and grew into being in the middle of nine, which is a very long story. Um, but and the memoir is called My Family Forest. Sunday breakfast. As a kid, I'd find Dad standing at the counter like a short order cook, spatula in hand, plugging griddle big enough to handle orders for everyone before we'd head out to church. Plates passed hand to hand. Breakfast delivered like a gift before the horizon widened. With Mom, I'd wake up on a boat to the swoosh of a kerosene stove's ignition, blackened toast and scrambled eggs before we'd head out to sea. Plates passed hand to hand, breakfast delivered like a gift before the horizon widened. This morning, coffee perks with poetry as poems pass hand to hand, breakfast delivered, a gift, ever widening my horizon, enduring even so.
Well, Elizabeth, I could picture this so clearly, all the different breakfasts that you were talking about, and it's really neat to trace that across, our own lives and get that chance. So thanks so much for writing it and for being here, and I hope you sleep
Thank you.
well or have a very energetic day with a breakfast that involves a lot of coffee.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Well, thanks so much for being here,
Thanks.
Elizabeth. Yeah, we do appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was Elizabeth Beauquet with Sunday Breakfast. Next, let's go to another first-time caller, Wisdom Ozoamena.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
Great, good to see you. So
Good
where
to meet you.
are you calling from?
I'm calling from Nigeria.
Oh, it's wonderful. So tough time for you too. So
Yeah.
glad you could make
What
it.
time is it there?
Honestly, this is 2:32 a.m. in the morning.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I feel so guilty, but it is. We're so glad you're here. So thank you.
It's okay. I'm so happy to be here also.
Aw. Well, wonderful.
Okay, can I start?
That'd
Yeah,
be great.
yeah, go ahead.
The market at 6 a.m. My tree argues itself awake at 6 a.m. Generators cough smoke over crates of tatashi. Akara and puff oil pops. Rain on red dust rises. I beg na, laugh. Mama Ifoma and the fishwoman laugh. The wheelbarrow pusher, there swallowing him, shouts, clear road. Danfo blasts Fuji and cuts the thin orange light. Radio Port Harcourt plays gospel. Someone yells, up Neba. Auntie braids hair on a coke crate. Gala boy dodges boxes. A man sleeps with one eye open beside bags of atarando. 1 ton banta sandal floats in the gutter. A crumpled pepper plane drowns beside it. I see my mama's hand in every bunch of bitter leaf. My tree takes my money and gives me noise that sounds like home. Thank you.
Yes. I love the music of your poem. It was really captivating. Hearing you read it was even better than it was in my head, definitely. And I mean, there's so many images and it's really hitting you like this market. And I really got to feel like I was somewhere that I'd never been, but then felt like I knew somehow. So it was really transformative in that way.
Yeah, I love that line. I see Mama's hands in every bunch of bitter leaf.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, the turn there is great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
Thanks for being with us so late.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you get some sleep too. Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, take
Okay,
care.
thank you very much.
Bye,
Thank you,
Wisdom.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye.
It was Wisdom Ozomena with the market at 6 a.m.
Which suddenly seems late for Wisdom.
Or early, yeah.
Early. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go next to Tom Barlow.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Katie.
Hey, Tom.
It's only 9:30 here.
Not
It's
too
only
bad.
9:30, so
Nice.
So
Not
you-
so
you-
terrible.
you
Yeah, we'll get the
feel
East
guilty.
Coasters complaining less after this one.
Yeah, well, now
guess.
I kind of know where most people are, so I can see. Maybe
The
we'll start
people
to.
left. Yeah.
Yeah, there. Okay.
Yeah,
We're
I think-
sweeping across like the sun
Across the country.
around the globe. Yeah,
Yeah.
around the world. All right. So, yeah, what do you have for us, Tom?
Well, I kind of I did more or less like Katie did. I just kept rambling on, and I came up with this kind of what I call a stutter poem, which I've written several of, where I get stuck with one phrase and just manipulate it throughout the length of the poem. Called Like an Evening, Like an Evening. Like uncorking the chilled wine, like the peacock trudges across asphalt, like a wistful rendezvous, like the leather couch, like enchante, like demure, like swallowing her nettles, like inveigle, like tousle, like tickle, like the reckless ruin of her careful coiffure, like blush, like bloom, like nape, like nipple, like peekaboo, like percolate, like swarm, like plunge, like braids thrashing, like bones crashing, like delirium, like roar, like glass, like plume, like pen count, like the wind drops at sunset, like legato, like adagio, like secretariat led slowly back to his stall, like the credits rolling across her eyes, like the city in blackout, like coquette, like wink, like a tender goodbye.
Yeah, beautiful ending out there. I love that.
Yeah, Tom, I thought this was so interesting. I've got to be honest and say I'm not usually a huge fan of the whole backslash poem. I think it's widely, like it became super trendy and then I felt like it was overused. But I feel like here it works so well because if instead you'd done the line break, it would have felt like a little bit of like a force, like you need to think really deeply about this level. When in fact, what I love about the poem is that it's fine to linger over certain things and then move through other things that you bring up more quickly, which is, of course, the way our mind actually works. But I really
of course,
love it.
Of course, when the poem was really written, every one of those phrases was a different line.
Right,
And I
right.
couldn't fit that into 14 lines. So
Yeah.
I had to find a way to cheat.
So I think you found a great way to evolve, with from the source poem and then to take it into that. And I really like that, how Secretariat enters very unexpectedly. I really like that. I always love a good horse entry. So thanks so much, Tom.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. Yeah, that was like an evening. Yet another American sonnet, which is the way this prompt turns out, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah, everyone coming up with those 14 lines.
If I hadn't written the whole hyphen after I wrote the page, I did pull a haiku from my thing, so I could have done that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I liked my hyphen better than the haiku.
That was great.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Well, let's go next to, I think the next farthest west poet is probably Jared Campbell, but I'm kind of guessing, to be honest. But
Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
Jared.
Mine started out as a response to a movie as well. I was watching 24-Hour Party People, which is a wonderful movie about the music scene in Manchester, England from the late 1970s to the early 1990s. But that's so I have lichen. Canals are made of what you throw away. Canals are made of heaviness, falling to where it belongs. There's an escape. Poisoned pigeons dropping from the sky as if they decided to be heavy and gave up on wings. There's an escape. The mind is a fungus growing on the body, like a lichen is a marriage. Algae and fungi can be separated.
Well, Jared, I have two questions that I have to ask you. One is, are you the official ambassador for pigeons in poetry? And
Yes.
then, yes, okay, too. And then number two is, I was really curious how you found this process because also too, moving to a poem that didn't have punctuation, it was a very big visual shift from what you sent in. So what did you think about doing it?
Yeah. It was an interesting exercise. Like I had to get myself into a frame of mind where I can make a longer than one page poem, which
Right.
is not usually what I do. So just borrowing images from the movie and then trying to get into an emotional space where words came out of them very freely, and then condensing down from that. And then the form of it is borrowed from Matthew Francis, who invented a form similar to this in his very loose translations from traditional Welsh poetry into English. And this very condensing kind of stanza where you start out with, what I did was 5 stresses, 4 stresses, 3 stresses, 2 stresses, so that each stanza densifies as you go along. I thought was a good way to take a large poem and then condense the images down.
Interesting. Yeah.
I also felt like it worked as like a concrete poem to me, like with it having spread out and then less so, like it gives sort of the visual effect of lichen on a rock. So I thought that was interesting too. So. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jared.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was Jared Campbell with Lichen. Next, let's go to Chris Sikora.
Good to be with you guys again. I am
Good to
way
see
out
you, Chris.
in California, so I'm way on the other side of the
Oh, we
country.
jumped Nancy Tennell.
I
in
knew
that
he was
case.
in California. I knew, Chris. I'm not at the controls. I knew. I knew.
Well, as I said in the editor note, this poem gestated when I was in the water at 5 a.m. in the dark, alone. And so unlike Mary, I did not want to know what was under that water. Thank you to the moonlight for giving me a little bit of light around that. So as I was sitting there wondering if sharks were going to have me for breakfast, when I wasn't thinking of that, I was kind of being a little bit wistful and reminiscing about the role of the ocean and my daughters who are getting older. My oldest is going off to college in a couple of weeks, and my other one is driving herself to high school. So
Oh, wow.
just sort of recognizing how quick it goes. You guys will be there before you know it. And poem kind of came out of that. And then it was a great exercise to pare it down and just say, I think maybe I can make a sonnet out of that.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the title too is it's a Jimmy Buffett lyric, right?
It is a little homage to Jimmy Buffett's song that also talks about contemplating life. And tomorrow is the anniversary of Jimmy going to that party in the sky about 3 years ago. So wanted to make that connection too.
Yeah.
Mother, Mother Ocean. Blow a kiss to Mother Ocean, I said, each time we drove over that hill to grade school. And often they did, and looked ahead at that billboard of blue that always stayed constant as they constantly changed and grew, while I prayed for slack tide to catch my breath, trying to hold salt water seeping through my hands. A fool and a dreamer they were left with, but a father too, who daily saw souls laboring out of life, endings and letting go, and perhaps it was my flaw to try to keep them rooted on land. For Mother Ocean is the one that will last and kiss the oceans in them after I'd passed.
Well, Chris, I have to say, too, that when I read your poem, I immediately thought of the Jimmy Buffett song because we were at a Jack Johnson concert where he played a cover of this song. And so it was crazy to me because I've been listening to the song over and over again. And I was like, wait a second. And I thought that it really captured like the same sort of energy as like a wonderful Jimmy Buffett song really does. And like the peacefulness of being in the ocean, but also like the fear of being in the ocean. And so I also thought that it was a radically stronger poem than the longer version initially that you sent in a really interesting way. And it was inspiring to me in my own poetry to have that, oh, but I've said the same thing multiple ways, all great. I want to keep all of them in. But it was a great reminder to me about how oftentimes saying it the most simple way we can results in the best. Is that how you felt about it? Or did you feel like you left a lot behind in the first draft?
Well, I think because I chose to do a sonnet, it really helped me condense it down and pull out just key images because it was kind of meandering and revisiting things. And it really helped to have the form to condense it. And it's not a process that I use that often, but will probably try to in the future.
Oh, that's wonderful. Great.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, good. All right. Well, enjoy your evening out there in California.
Thank you both. You guys are wonderful. Fins up.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah. So that was Chris Sikora with Mother, Mother Ocean. And now let's go to Nancy Tennell, who is not quite so far out. Hey, Nancy.
No.
Hi.
I'm just one time zone away. I followed Dick Westheimer's advice. I really didn't think I could do the long poem because I had just written a longer epic for
a lot of writing this month.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I'll do stream of consciousness. And whenever I'm just left to ponder, I usually start pondering war. But then it pretty quickly led me into something else. So I stuck with it. But my poem is called I Have Known Both War and Peace. There are days when I fear that the world will never climb out of the abysmal pit of war. Humanity is increasingly less humane, unable to respect differences or borders, unable to maintain civility toward others, living in an eternal midnight which never brings a dawn. I once walked in the darkness you brought. My commitment prevailed, but not for long. You made it a war, but I would not be won. You were the darkness that clouded my nights, seeded rains of tears, filled me with fright, You were a fire blazing through a forest, destroying what scampers and climbs and crawls, nests, raises young, knows the rhythms of hunting and being hunted. Ashes, ashes, it all came down. We burned to the ground, destruction all around. We were the choking smoke, the suffocated nest, hearts never at rest. I rose from those ashes to find life and joy, to find new love in its truest form. From ashes to health and inner peace, from those ashes for you came my forgiveness.
Sweet poem there.
Yeah, well, Nancy, what made me think about in this poem was so much the turn to the personal in the second stanza, and it made me think like how much I love a turn when I'm not expecting the turn to happen much, just yet. And so like that, because I understand too the idea of like it's kind of hard to, once you're talking about war, to turn it to something personal without firsthand experience and everything, but to make it a poem that is really compelling on a personal level. And like I love that you like leaned into that, because I could see like it feeling a little bit like, this is a hard turn to make. So I wasn't expecting it. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, I do have to say, in fairness to my first husband, I actually read this to my current husband tonight, and he was like, whoa. I said, well, in all fairness, I exaggerated a bit for the sake of, poetic license. And, but it really, there was a time of forgiveness, and life goes on. You move on to new beginnings and new chapters, and it's all wonderful.
Well, I can definitely relate, Nancy.
Yeah,
so thank you so much.
I understand. Thanks.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Nancy. It was Nancy Snell with I Have Known Both War and Peace.
And we are headed back to the West Coast.
The West Coast in Sean Evaningo Sanders.
Hey, friends. It's been a long time.
Yes. In a new location, I see, with beautiful natural light all around you.
Yeah.
What is going on here? The sun?
This is nice. Well, she's moved too. Yeah.
That's great.
So finally getting settled. Finally getting back to writing.
Oh, well, good.
Great,
there's no relief like fully moved in relief, I think. It feels like it's going to go on forever, but it doesn't. Yay.
Just need to hang all the art on the walls. That's the last step. So
it'll happen, I believe.
Looking forward to doing that. Yeah. So this was really hard because I wrote a long poem. I really liked that long poem and didn't want to take anything out of it. I'm like, I don't know. So then I found like some old like free writes that I had when I was trying to do like braided poems. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll work with one of these. And so I'm really glad that you're only having us read the 14-line poem, because the other one was just garbage. But I was able to pull some stuff out of it. So here we go. Watching a Charlie Brown Christmas after a day in the park. My granddaughter, unsure whether she should cry, hears, "Yay, you did it! Wasn't that fun? You're okay." She runs past her mommy to climb the slide again. I remember how it felt to be young and resilient. As women, we learned how to open doors with smiles, with uninvited hands on our backs. In those days, my hair was bigger than my self-worth, lips quivering when I demanded equal pay. In a field where ones and zeros simply meant men had more zeros in their paycheck. Somewhere along the line, I gave up on climbing. Good grief. What is this, a pity party? Pull yourself together, Charlie Brown. I hang my ornament on a curled over branch, hug my family, and sing.
Well, Sean, I love that line. My hair was bigger than my self-worth. It's so heartbreaking. I mean, I love it in that it's tragic and hard to hear, but also like really hits at it. It also seems like kind of the flip side of the Dolly Parton quote I heard a lot in the last week that was like, the higher your hair, the closer to God. I was seeing that like all week. So I thought that was, I thought it was a really interesting place to go. I now understand it being an old poem that makes sense as Charlie Brown After Christmas a little bit.
Yeah.
I was curious, what did you take from the process then of also like having revisited this poem and then dissected it? Did it feel like a worthy exercise for you and that?
Well, the funny thing, because I keep a lot of old free writes and see if I could mine them sometimes. But the funny part was like, I don't even know what I was talking about in the beginning of this. I can't remember. So it really wasn't making sense. So that was easy to just cross out a big section of it. But I think the thing about not needing to explain every little thing and make a segue between the movements, in other words, to really trust your reader. I think that was a forced exercise in learning to do that. So I love this exercise.
Great.
I'm gonna try this a lot more.
Well, that's
Just
I want to read it.
You get 10 lines, or you get 14 lines, or whatever.
Well, that's great. You're inspiring me to revisit my own prompt. So thank you, Sean.
Great.
Well, it was wonderful to see you, and congratulations on the move.
Thanks. And congratulations on your new book.
Thank you.
So it's really, really wonderful.
Thanks.
And good to see you, Poetry Man.
He's back. I knew Sean would remember.
Well, thanks so much, Sean.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
It was Sean Evaningo Sanders with Watching a Charlie Brown Christmas After a Day at the Park. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up the invited prompt lines for tonight. Now, what do you have for a haiku for us, Katie?
My haiku is a monoku. Thinking about the upcoming weather we're going to be hit with tomorrow evening, I believe.
Yeah, this was news to me until you let me know. Apparently, we're going to batten the hatches a little bit.
Yep.
Get some, rain barrels out. I don't know what you do.
No.
No.
We have our bottled water.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Some things can't be named tropical depression. So it was called Tropical Depression 5 or whatever. And I was like, I feel kind of bad for this tropical depression. Don't do anything bad to our house or our area. Thank you.
That's a really nice monoku, though. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, what did I do for a haiku? Oh, yeah, this was from lunch. We were looking at the table and conspiracy theory, 2 ants gossip on the wood grain. There you go. There were 2 ants at the table. Katie pointed out they were whispering secrets.
They
to each
were.
other.
They totally were.
And she swears it's true.
That's true. Now we have to go back and ask what they were talking about, but I don't think they're there anymore.
But that is the haiku for the week. That is the show for this week. Now, next week's prompt is going to be what, Katie?
We are going to write an ode to an antiquated piece of technology.
Oh, that's fun. Okay.
And I do have to say, I went antiquated intentionally over obsolete.
Interesting. Okay.
So, yeah, but I think that this was in part because I was thinking about the Motorola poem that we read on a Poetry Space episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who was that wrote that one?
Was it Lucia Perillo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a poem that I greatly enjoyed, but I also made me want to find out. And bonus points, try to pick one that you think you maybe use more than others if it's one that you actually touched, or this is a really good chance to get creative and try to not send 100 BlackBerry poems. Would be nice. But, get as creative as you can. It's always, I think, the way to approach prompts anyway. So I'm excited to see what everybody comes up with. And then, of course, this is the end of the month.
Oh, good remembering.
And so it is time, last call to get in your poems for all the prompts this month. Of course, the prompt we just announced will be for the next series, so it won't open until I have sent the responses for the current month's prompt. But it does include last week's prompt because we just got it in for that. So make sure to get your poems in.
Yeah, the deadline for that, we should say, is noon or midnight.
Noon. Too bad you missed it.
Midnight Eastern time, which is 2 hours from now if you're watching this live. So get your poems in if you wrote any poems this month. Yeah.
Yep, for the prompts. So, looking forward to reading those. And then, we'll have the winner in not too long.
All right. Well, great. Well, that was this week's prompt. Write an ode to an antiquated piece of technology. And the guest next week is going to be Rebecca Gale Howell. So Rebecca's newest book is this Erased Genesis book, which is fascinating erasure poem of the book of Genesis. Also, she's a great poem that won the Reader's Choice Award for the Rattle Poetry Prize way back when, about 10 years ago. So wonderful poet, Rebecca Gale Howell. Looking forward to that. Monday, September 7th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope we have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.